This video is to help you complete the notes on Unit 7, starting page 1. To review the beginning, Tfilas Erev ein lakeva, the Tfilah of the evening is not set. This is a quote from the Mishnah. The Gemara asks, Ma ein lakeva, what is the meaning of it is not set? Ileima di bai matzli kule leila, if you want to say that it means that you can pray all night, litni, the Tana should have said Tfilat Erev kol halayla. Then the Tana should have simply have stated Tfilat Erev is kol halayla, which would simply mean it's all night. The Tana didn't do that. Ela ma ein lakeva. Instead, what is the meaning of ein lakeva? Keman de amar Tfilat Erev reshut. Is following the opinion of the one that says that Tfilah of Arvit is optional, it's not mandatory. Now we're going to bring support for this opinion. The Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, Rav Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel, Tfilat Arvit, regarding Tfilat Arvit, Tfilat Erev, Ran Gamliel Omer Chova, Ran Gamliel says that Tfilat Erev is a Chova, it's an obligation. Rav Yeshua Omer Reshut, Rav Yeshua says it's optional. So this is supporting what we just said before, that there is an opinion that says that Arvit is optional. And here it is. We bring this debate between Ran Gamliel and Rabbi Yeshua. Ran Gamliel says that it is an obligation, but Rabbi Yeshua says it's an option. So our Mishnah is following the opinion of Rabbi Yeshua that says that it's an option. This is why the Tana said Tfilat Erev ein lakeva. Tfilat of the evening is not set, meaning the obligation is not set. And finally, the unit comes to a conclusion by saying, Amar Abaye, Abaye said, Abaye was one of the great scholars of the Gemara, he says, Alacha kedivre omer chova. The law follows, the Alacha is like the din. The din is like the one that says that it's an obligation, meaning like Gamliel says. Where Rava, and Rava, which was another one of the great scholars of the Talmud period, Amar, he says, Alacha, the din is kedivre omer reshut. The law follows that it's really it's an option, it's not mandatory. If you now look in the top of your page where we have the text of the Gemara, we did some of the stops. Now we're going to be able to divide it into smaller sections. Tfilat Erev ein lakeva. This is the quote of the Mishnah. The Tfilah of the evening is not set. The Gemara now proceeds to ask, Ma ein lakeva, what is the meaning of not having keva, it's not set? So the Gemara suggests the first option, Ileima divai matzli kule leila, if you want to say that it means that you can pray kule leila all night, litni tfilat erev kol halayla, then the Tana should teach us tfilat erev is kol halayla. Ela ma ein lakeva, so what is the meaning of ein lakeva? Keman di amar Tfilat Arvit reshut. He's following the opinion that says that Tfilat Arvit is optional. The Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, that Rav Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel, Tfilat Arvit, regarding Tfilat Arvit, Rabbi Gamliel Omer Chova, Rabbi Gamliel says that it's an obligation, Rabbi Yeshua Omer reshut. Rabbi Yeshua disagrees and he holds that it's an option. Now we have the conclusion of the Gemara. Amar Abaye alacha kedivre omer chova. Abaye says that the law follows the one that says that it's an obligation. Rava Amar alacha kedivre omer reshut. And Rava disagrees and he holds that we follow the opinion of the one that says that Arvit is an option. In your notes, if you now turn the page and go towards the flow chart. So we already done some of the steps. Step number 2 is the question. What is the meaning of ein lakeva? Number 3 is the suggested answer, that perhaps it means that you can say it all night. And 4 is the reason why this answer is not valid, because if it means that Tfilat Erev is all night, then the Tana should have said Tfilat Erev kol halayla, which means it's all night, and that's not what he said. So therefore, it must mean something else. Elamai, so what is the meaning of it's ein lakeva? This is the suggested answer, number 6. That it means that the tefillah of Arvit is not an obligation, it's an option. Tefillat Erev is an option. And now we bring support for this answer. The Amar Rabbi Yehuda, because Rabbi Yehuda in fact says that there is a debate about Arvit. Rabbi Gamliel says that it's an obligation, while Rabbi Shua says it's an option. So number 7 is bringing support for number 6. The Amar, bringing support that there is in fact an opinion that says that Arvit is optional. So number 7 is saying, Rabbi Yehuda says that according to one opinion, Arvit is an obligation, but according to another opinion, Arvit is an option. And finally, we have the conclusion number 8, where we have a debate between Abaye and Rava. Abaye says that we follow the opinion that's an obligation, and Rava says that it's an option. Below the chart, we now have the explanation of each step. So box number 1, this is a quote from the Mishnah, which the Gemara is going to explain. Number 2, that is the question. The question was, what does the Mishnah mean by that? Number 3 was the suggested answer that is about to be rejected. Number 4, this box here, is the reason why that suggested answer is rejected. Number 5 is repeating the question. So what is the meaning of Ein Lakeva? Since the suggested answer was rejected, the Gemara repeats the question. So what does it mean? 5 is repetition of the question. Number 6 is the accepted answer. Number 7 is bringing support for the answer. And number 8 is the conclusion. Abaye is saying that we follow one opinion, Abaye disagrees. Now if we continue on the next page, so there's a couple important points here. Number 1, it turns out that the Tana of the Mishnah, the Tana who wrote the Mishnah, he purposely used the words Tfilat Erev Ein Lakeva. It was wise, it was on purpose that he used the words Tfilat Erev Ein Lakeva, because these words can teach us 2 things. Number 1, it teaches us that Arvit, that it can be recited throughout the night. It's all night, that's true. But that's not the only thing that it means. Because if all it meant was that you can say it all night, the Tana would have simply said Tfilat Erev Kol Halayla. But he chose different words to teach us, yes, it's true that you can say Tfilat Erev all night. And number 2, that the obligation is different. It is optional, unlike Shacharit and Mincha. The nature of the obligation of Arvit is different. That's why it says Ein Lakeva. It's not set, meaning the obligation is also not set. So with one expression, with this choice of words, he communicated to us 2 important ideas about Arvit. And this is important because this is one of the many examples throughout the Talmud. We have many examples like this, where we see how the Tanaim choose the words very carefully because they want to teach us maximum information using minimum words. Because if you remember, we learned at the beginning of the year that the Torah Sheba'al Peh was not intended to be written down. It was supposed to be preserved orally. And therefore, when they did write down, they chose very carefully the words that they had to use because you're not supposed to really write it down. And this is an example. The Tana purposely chose the words Ein Lakeva to teach us 2 separate ideas. Had the Tana written in the Mishnah, Tfilat Erev Kol Halayla, then we would know that Arvit is all night, because that's Kol Halayla means, but we would not have known that the obligation is not set, that it's optional. That we would not have gained from those words. So therefore he chose the words Ein Lakeva. And finally, when we go to the Shulchan Aruch, so there's a couple of points. Number 1, the time for Arvit is all night, meaning from the time that it gets dark until dawn, the first light in the morning, which is already the beginning of morning. Regarding the obligation of Arvit, so the Shulchan Aruch holds like there was a time where Arvit was optional, which means if the person wanted to do it, it was okay to do it. If the person chose not to say Arvit, he didn't have to say Arvit. But later, a few hundred years after the Gemara, it was accepted as an obligation, which means that people voluntarily chose to obligate themselves in saying Arvit. So therefore, for us now, practically speaking, Arvit is an obligation like Shacharit and like Mincha. But since originally Arvit was a different type of obligation, it was optional, this explains why there's some differences between Shacharit and Arvit. The main one, of course, being that in Shacharit, as well as in Mincha, the Chazan repeats the Amidah, and we learn that the reason is to enable those who don't know how to pray to fulfill their obligation by listening to the Chazan. But in Arvit, there is never a repetition of the Amidah. And the reason is because, to begin with, there was no obligation to pray. So therefore, the people who didn't know how to pray, they obviously didn't have an obligation, so there's no need to repeat it to enable them to fulfill an obligation that does not exist. Now, this is regarding the obligation of saying Amidah, but Shema at night is an obligation from the Torah. That's a separate mitzvah, right? Shema is not a tefillah. Shema is a separate mitzvah, as we learned before. And as the pasuk says, there's a mitzvah to say Shema b'shochbecha when you lay down, uvkumecha when you get up. So the mitzvah Shema, of course, was always an obligation twice daily. But the Amidah, it used to be optional, but later on, the Jewish people as a people accepted that obligation to recite it